What is up? Welcome back to the You Can Too podcast. On today's show, we have Case Kenny on the show. Case Kenny is a Chicago-based author, podcaster, recording artist behind the New Mindset Journal. Like, he's doing amazing things in the space of mindfulness. But man, Case, give me an overview of where this whole thing started for you.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. Yeah, I mean, I joke that I share my feelings for a living. That's like the description I give myself. But I think that's a pretty accurate description of what I do and kind of where I came from motivation wise. I mean, I started the podcast New Mindset Who Dis in the middle of 2018, really just in response to my life. Just, at the time I worked a sales job, running a sales team for an ad tech company. And we really just at the time, I was 28, 29. And it was kind of just one of those things where I was like, man, I would really hate to look back in 10 years and realize that I was doing things that weren't true to me, that I was busting my face to hit a sales quota in the thought that hitting a sales quota would make me money and money would make me happy. Or I'm dating these people because I think that this is what I want in a partner, even though it's not. Right. So at the time, I was just literally just motivated to start answering questions in my life. Like, why do I want certain things? Why do I feel a certain way? And at the time, podcasting wasn't as big as it was now, and I saw it kind of as a way to be vulnerable, a way to challenge myself very publicly to answer questions about life and love and success and fulfillment and all these things. And so I started the podcast, and really the rest is history from there. Pulling on that thread of interest led me down writing and creating and entrepreneurship and all these things, but it really did come from a very genuine place of wanting to address a need, a concern, an area of my life.
Yeah, man. My podcast started off as a solo podcast as well. So it was like a personal journal. It was almost more for me than it was for anyone else, honestly.
Yeah, dude, that's what I always say. I always say the podcast is for me. Now that, it's my full-time thing, of course, you got to be a little broader thinking, but I always say it's for me because it gives me such benefits. I love hearing that.
Yeah, my first 100 episodes were literally solo, and then I started getting people on the show, and it was like that was the perspective I took as well. I've never been much of a journaler, but I do, like, I'll shoot a voice memo in my phone, stuff like that, and doing that in the podcast is kind of that thing. Take me through like your internal narrative stepping out of that sales job, because I bet you there was
Hmm.
a lot of resistance stepping out of that and then stepping into exactly what you said, kind of sharing your feelings.
Yeah, big step. I mean, I worked at that company for 8 years, and then before that, a couple other companies. But I started as an account executive at this company, left as a regional vice president. So I put a lot of effort into there, and I grew a lot, and I was able to do well financially. So it was very, very good to me.
Yeah.
So leaving that, it wasn't like one of those things where you hate your job and you dread it and you just want to get out. It wasn't that. For me, it was kind of a thought process of having plateaued fulfillment wise and professionally in a sense, perhaps. But also, I had been really stubborn about building parallel side hustling, if you want to call it, and building leverage so that when I did leave my full-time job, because I've always wanted to be an author and do creative things and, do art. That's always been an objective of mine, but I wanted to do it in the right way with leverage. That is, I knew that if I had left my job before I had leverage, financial leverage, that I would quit and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I need to put food on the table. I need to make money. I'll do that deal. I'll do this deal. I'll do this sponsorship. I'll create this product. I just need money. I'll put quotes on a sweatshirt. I need money. I knew I would have done that, as anyone would have, right? Because you need to make money. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to really stay true to myself and what I'm building and what I stand for and what I'm passionate about. So I was really patient. I did the podcast for 2.5 years before leaving. And I think that served me really well. And then, leaving was just one of those things where I was like, all right, it was the end of the year. We were looking towards the next year, and I was like, here's a good opportunity for me to to jump ship and have a clean slate, start at the beginning of the year. I had a lot of proof points and data points for sales and the business. Like, I knew it was healthy. I had proven to myself that I could do something I wasn't familiar with. Like, I didn't know anything about shipping or logistics or manufacturing or how to do a P&L. I didn't know how to do that kind of stuff. So I had been spending the past years doing that. I was like, all right, I'd proven to myself that I can start at zero and build. I had proven that I could learn something and do it. And I've got proof points that I've built something that people consume or buy. Let's give it a shot. And haven't looked back since. But it was a lot of resistance to your point.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, they do have that. And it's smart that you did that too. You're like, I don't want to have essentially a plan B, but more so have a nest egg so that I don't have to worry about having a plan B. It was like, I can actually go all in on plan A. And knowing that it's kind of like your superpower is like simplifying emotions for people.
Hmm.
When did that come to you for you to realize? Because I feel like for me, like I felt a pull coming to this podcast, like creating it. But like I always tell people, it wasn't like I was pushed towards it. It was something that I felt more fulfilled by than anything. When did that kind of awaken for you that you realized it?
Yeah, I mean, again, we talked about the motivation for the podcast. And then what I realized through the process, again, not a life coach, not an expert, not that guy, no aspiration to be that guy. Never even wanted to get into the wellness space, the self help space. Fell into it naturally because of my own need. But what I realized through doing the podcast, which is me, most of my episodes are me taking a topic and asking myself a question about it, or offering a statement and then
Mhm.
proving it logically through my life so that I can actually believe it and not just have it be a nice statement. What I realized through that process of introspection and question answering, asking and answering, was I was practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness, the art of being present, mindfulness, the art of being self aware, mindfulness, the art of challenging yourself. And I realized what I was doing. And I realized that mindfulness is a muscle. It's something you get better at as you do. You want to talk about 10,000 hour rule or anything like that? The more hours, the more reps you put in, the better you get at it. And I just realized more and more episodes, I was getting better at it personally. I was able to make breakthroughs. I was able to speak eloquently about these subjects that previously really confused me.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, I started to get feedback where people were saying, Case, like, you're saying these things on the podcast and they're pretty obvious things, but you're saying it in a way that's so simple. And I finally got it. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I was like, well, maybe that's my value. Maybe I'm realizing what I'm doing is I'm simplifying it for myself and in essence, simplifying it for other people. And that felt really good because it wasn't forced. I don't talk about topics that I haven't lived or have close observation with. It felt
Right.
very natural. My goal isn't to answer the world's questions or solve the world's problems. My goal is to simplify the things that we can all relate to. And, started to get more feedback that way. And of course, the intrinsic value. And yeah, I just kept pulling on that. And, I'm approaching episode 500 now. So you can think of how many hours that is. It's been about, I don't know, 4 hours per episode doing it. So
Yeah.
what's four times
A
500?
lot.
We're putting in some good hours on that.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt on that. And that's the something I seen. I think you're on a podcast I was listening to, and you kind of take like a word or a quote or like a perspective, and then you expand on it into 15 minutes kind of thing.
Yeah.
I did the exact same thing when I started my podcast. And it was just like, I can take my perspective on it because there's only one of me and only one person that can take the perspective that I have. And there's likely going to be people that resonate with that. And that's the kind of take I want to take on it. But I'm curious, knowing that, like you said, over almost 500 podcasts, and then of course all the social media work that you do on Instagram and everywhere else. What has content creation taught you about yourself?
Well, pretty cool actually. Like it taught me that I can form a perspective on something that maybe I hadn't thought I was capable of or informed enough of. Like, but literally by giving myself a prompt, right? Seeing something, saying, "Oh, this person says, you got to learn to forgive yourself," and I'm like, "Oh man, forgiveness! What a lofty subject." Maybe ask myself, "Is there anything I need to forgive myself for? What does forgiveness look like?" And then I sit there in the right headspace with some music on, and I sit down and I could create content around that just by giving myself a prompt and then turning to my own experience with a lot of I statements,
Mhm.
personal firsthand encounters, and come up with my answer. Not an answer that appeases other people necessarily or an answer that gets clicks necessarily, but an answer that is from my own experience. It was really uplifting in that sense. Like I can sit down and talk about something that before I would have laughed at or scoffed at or had a big question mark and actually sit down and create. My content creation process is it's tough to describe. I mean, I would literally give myself a prompt. I'll put on some music and I just like word vomit out. And surprisingly, it actually comes out pretty great. I think that's my skill. You put me in the right headspace and you give me 40 minutes of just like focus. It
Yeah.
just, that's like my skill or my talent. And I've done that hundreds of times, of course. But it all starts with a prompt. I think as content creators, give yourself a prompt. Like I'm never really starting from zero because I've got Google Docs and Google Docs of ideas, points, questions, quotes, things to react to that I'm always marinating on it. And then when it comes time to plop one, I'm like, all right, let me start here and off to the races. So I never feel like I'm either creating just to create or creating from zero. It's all kind of connected to me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. The questions that we ask ourselves determine the quality of our life. And you are talking
Yes.
so much in that space. I seen something of I'm the kind of person who was like a prompt that you have, and I
Yeah.
love that perspective because it's like, how do you want to show up for yourself? Who do you want to identify as? What are there any like prompts or anything that you kind of went through that came to you that have been just foundational for your self discovery?
I mean, I will say that one, like
Yeah.
I talk a lot about mindfulness, what mindfulness is in my world, what, how to get value from it. Mindfulness, of course, can take many different forms, right?
Yes, sir.
Mindfulness is just an idea of being still present, open, honest, vulnerable. What you do with that moment could be different. You could meditate, you could journal, you could do therapy, you could do healing, you could do yoga, you could do whatever, right?
Yeah.
But the idea of mindfulness is you're being poised in the present, in your mind and your body in harmony in the same place, and you're being vulnerable. For me, what I've realized about mindfulness is mindfulness in that sense is the art of self-awareness, but self-awareness on its own is good and we need it. But without action, what is the point,
Hmm.
And that's where I really gravitate towards. Sometimes I refer to as brute force mindfulness, where it's like you've got to get in the headspace in order to force yourself to do action. Force may be the wrong word. It's incentivize yourself. How can you use self-awareness, kindness, introspection, forgiveness, compassion to get yourself to be motivated to take an action that will align you with whatever conclusion you've come to? So in that sense, I'm very big on verbs. Like we
Hmm.
have to verb ourselves into the reality we want. We can't think ourselves into the reality we want. It plays a huge role, of course, a massive, massive role. But action will always be the great equalizer. We can't expect good things to come to us. We have to create things for the universe to react to, people to react to, industries to react to in order to receive whatever it is we want. So to answer your question, long-winded, yeah, that general prompt, I'm the kind of person who, is really big for me because I think we have a tendency to identify with adjectives. Oh, I'm a kind person, or I want to be successful, or I just want to be happy in life. That's a little tough because for the most part, adjectives like happy or successful or fulfilled, they can be random. They can be taken from us. There's lots of elements in those equations that we can't control. But going to an equation that is, I'm the kind of person who, we're coming back to verbs that I can control, things that I can do. And I think that's creates a twofold effect. You say, say my goal is I want to be successful. Instead of saying that, you say, no, I'm the kind of person who does what he says he's going to do, shows up on time, volunteers to go first, makes the most cold calls, whatever it is in your sector.
Yeah.
Now you're not only giving yourself a roadmap for things to do to make you the adjective you want, but you're also giving yourself credit for the things you are doing. And I think a lot of the times when we're not at the point where we say, I am happy, or we're not happy all the time, or we're not feeling successful, we do this very human thing where we beat ourselves up and say, oh, maybe I'm a loser, or maybe I'm this. But by focusing on verbs, we show how much we are in control of our life. We give ourselves a little more patience to continue to do those things to get the effect we want. And it takes the pressure off from these things like, I just want to be happy. So, long-winded answer, but I think that as a journal prompt and also as the habit formation tool, I think is really, really powerful, focusing on verbs rather than adjectives.
Absolutely. It's more because anything of confidence is really what the foundation of it is, right? Like we're trying to build some confidence to take the action, maybe leave our job, maybe show up and build the podcast, whatever that looks like. You have to have proof or you're not going to feel inclined to start. And sometimes it is forced. You're definitely right. Like
Yeah.
it definitely is forced. A lot of the time we don't feel like doing the things that we should do because it's in our best interest because we're coming from a negative internal state or self-image kind of thing. Where did you take that perspective and start to implement it in your life? Like, did something come across for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a good point too, because I think I used to think about terms like mindfulness or self love or whatever. You think
Yeah,
of it as this very ethereal energy thing. It's like, yeah, I just as long as I believe it, I'll achieve it, and I attract goodness. And don't get me wrong, I think there definitely is a great room in our life to practice belief
for
and
sure.
manifestation. Something I talk a lot about. But at the end of the day, we have to create. I just did an episode on manifestation about about what it is. And
Hmm.
I my consensus, again, logically talking myself through these topics, is manifestation is the art of giving the universe more things to react to. And when we
Hmm.
say the universe isn't some mysterious force. You could believe in what you believe. But I'm talking practically. The universe is other people. It's the internet. It's your boss. It's your sector. It's your industry. It's all those things.
Yeah.
And to manifest, you're verbing, you're doing, you're giving those things something to react to. You're an object in motion bumping into other objects in motion, and that's where the thing comes true. We have to be willing to go and do these things. And for me, I think it was a willingness to, not just stay content in what I was doing previously in a sales job.
Right.
Or even now, it's like I'm continuing to challenge myself. It'd be easy to sit back and just do a podcast and post quotes on the internet. I don't want to. I need to grow past that. So I'm about to launch something that's different. I'm doing a lot in music, which is different, like
Yeah.
challenging myself to say, if I have this goal of growth, I have this vision of myself, I have to put more things out into the universe to react to, even if it's in a space that I'm unfamiliar with or uncomfortable with. I used to have this bad mentality of thinking that intention would attract goodness in my
Mm,
life. Like my intention would attract the outcome I want. Like, oh, I've got really clear goals. I've got a good bucket list. Like I'm good, and I know I'm good at what I do, but other people don't. The universe doesn't. We have to prove it. We have to show up and shout it from a mountain, give the world something to react to. And I think a lot of us sometimes, like, we mistake intention for action.
yeah.
Although it's the most important step, though, is setting the intention, knowing your intention, knowing your why, knowing your purpose, knowing what you're capable of. But the next step is the step that actually gives you the thing. And then you're going to look back and you're going to say, yeah, I did manifest that through action. So, just again, more on the power of doing and verbs.
I love that perspective. Have not heard that perspective on manifestation because, yeah, a lot of people say, I want to do this thing. That's it. It's like, I want to do it. And that's, we're just hoping the universe is kind of
Yeah,
presented to us.
yeah,
And I think you're right. Like both need to be there. Like you have to have the intention to have the clarity to know where to go. And you also have to take the action to get there. Right. Like a perspective I love is that volume negates luck. Like that's how you get lucky is you take more action, you give the universe, like you said, more proof to reason why you should get what you say you want to get kind of thing.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
The topic of luck is a big one. I did a whole episode on it where I summarized. There's this book. I'm struggling to remember the name of it. It's called like the Art of Novelty. It was this book by this guy who's like a biochemist, and he was basically describing the role that luck plays in science and chemistry, and how so many great inventions, from pasteurization to penicillin, were luck. They were accidents. But there's a lot to be said about where luck comes from, and I
mhm.
think a lot of us think that luck is luck. Luck is arbitrary. Luck is random. Luck happens to some people, and some people are unlucky. Where the reality is, luck is the same idea of manifestation. It's about randomness that comes from doing. It's about objects in motion bump into other objects in motion. People who post their thoughts on Twitter bump into other people who post their thoughts on Twitter, and luck comes from there. Goodness comes from there. So I think sometimes if we don't feel lucky or we're not on the right path, we start prescribing titles like I'm an unlucky person or I never get lucky.
Yep.
Whereas I think the key to getting lucky is the same as the key to manifesting, which is doing, and doing as often as possible, with intention, not just doing just to do, but like doing it over and over and over again and repetition until you bump into what you want or evolve to step two or whatever it may be.
Fully in support of that. And that's the mindset I think a lot of people need to take on things because like even for you with the podcast, you've almost 500 episodes. Like there's proof backed up for why they should be that way. I'm almost this will probably be over 150 episodes in, and I started when I was 17, and it was like I
Nice.
have I have this mindset of like I'm looking so long, and I know that there's a part for you where you kind of take action based on regret. That's something that you definitely like see as a mindset. But I also think
Mm.
I want to touch on something that I've noticed in almost every person that I look up to or someone that I've spoken with, have on the podcast is delusional optimism is a part of them. Like it's just a part of them. It's
Yeah.
been a part of me. Where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, it's such a great phrase. I always refer to myself as a delusional optimist, even though I don't like the word delusional, but I am just over the top
Yeah.
optimist. I mean, the answer is I choose to be, but it's not forced. It's not patronizing. It's not, oh, everything will work out, buddy. It comes through the lens that I look at everything in life. That's been a reframing for me. Like, again, back to the idea of like, what is your goal in life? My goal is none of the things I referenced earlier: happy, successful, confident, fulfilled. My goal, I always say, is I just want to be proud of myself, because everything else will come from that. If you're proud of yourself, success, happiness, partnership, it will come, because being proud of yourself is dictated by what you do 100%. If you don't do the things that will make you happy, successful, proud, you won't be proud, right? So I always look at life through the lens of pride, and I've been proud of myself for a while now. Not ego, not Ryan Holiday, not the bad side, but the good side. And I have enough proof points that say I do what I say I'm going to do. Anytime I don't, I course correct and I say I will never do that again. And it's life has ups and downs, but it's only led me to further grow and evolve and find goodness in people. And so with that as my observation point and my evidence, I can't help but be hopeful and optimistic, because for one, I've realized how much control we do have in our life outside of the things that we don't, that can be debilitating, and some people just go through bad luck. And it hits like a freight train. I understand that. Certainly I want to empathize, but for the most part, I think a lens of pride and proof points of pride, it will make you optimistic because you realize what you can control. I think the reason that we get pessimistic in life is we start giving our power away. We
Hmm.
start, attaching our validation to other things. The things that I've decided I can't control. So why would I even focus on it? I'm going to focus on the things I can control and pride. And so far, that's created great opportunities that I've worked hard for. And, it's filled my life with peace and good people. So why shouldn't I be optimistic? So yeah, that's how I look at it.
It's so true, and it's kind of like the perspective of people that believe that they're unlucky. It's the same thing with delusional optimism. It's like you choose it to some level. Maybe it's unconscious, but you do choose it. It's the way that you live, and you're going to get what you look for. And if you believe that you're an unlucky person, you're not going to take the action to get lucky. It's kind of like that mindset. For those that like just don't have that mindset, because I feel like I was born with delusional optimism. Like
Yeah.
it's always been a part of me. For those that don't feel that that's just a part of them, where do you think they start?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the first step is for one what you just said. Like you will reinforce any worldview you have. If you say don't think of a yellow car, you're going to be thinking of a yellow car. You're going to be spotting yellow cars. So if I think for one, that's like we need to encourage people to realize that your mindset does create your reality 100%. You could say it's the other way around, but you have these beliefs, you're going to find support of them. If you say I'm a lonely person, you're going to continue to find evidence that you're a lonely person, which is only going to further cement that feeling of loneliness. Any topic, whatever it may be. I think the best thing is to find ways to give yourself credit in life. That's credit for the things you've overcome, things that you're working on, things that you said you would do that you did do, right? I mean, small little things. You said the dishes were dirty. You didn't wait. You went and you did them. Small little things, small little wins, baby wins. Give yourself the ability to give yourself credit for it. I really do believe that if you can prove to yourself that you have more impact in your life than you previously thought, that is a key to optimism. Because again, talking about optimism, it's very quickly eroded when we think that other people are the ones who are going to give us what we want in life. And I think the more that you can show yourself that you're in control, the better. Mindfulness for me is literally just the art of going through your memory bank and challenging or making sense of those memories. Like there's many kinds of mindfulness, of course. There's like spiritual, there's ones that's led by like Zen Buddhists and like ideas and concepts. I'm very logical. It's like a lawyer speaking to a court. Like, here's the evidence. I've been through A, therefore I believe B. I've been through C, therefore I believe D. Making sense of our memories through observation and through logic can prove things to yourself. A lot of the times, things that are contrary to what you've been believing, right? I'm a failure. Well, this says otherwise. This says otherwise. I'm working on this to hopefully work to this point. Those two beliefs can't coexist. So, again, challenging yourself to be open to the discomfort of sitting in that, but finding a way to be proud of yourself and finding a way to give yourself credit.
Yeah, it's like the question like, what if I'm wrong? Like we don't challenge our thoughts enough, not nearly enough. And that's I think that's a part of the delusional optimism because we're always asking why. We're curious. Like we don't want
Mm-hmm.
to accept what we believe to be our limit or what is our life supposed to be. I know you talk a lot about facts versus feelings is something that I think we don't take into account nearly enough. And I see mindfulness as like just introspection, like just
Yeah.
questioning, just genuine questioning throughout your day and for everything that comes up for you. Because when we don't question it and we just accept things as they are, that ends up being our reality once again. It's our beliefs and they determine it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Mindfulness is wherever you want to take it, but at its core, it's introspection and it's challenging. I mean, I just wrote a book. One of the chapters is on the popular topic that's been talked a lot about lately of mimetic theory, the idea that there's very little in life that we have decided we want outside of influence of others. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're humans. We're community driven, society. Like that's, how things work principally. But if that's the case, then mindfulness is either justifying those wants by saying, okay, I've been wanting this and now I'm going to prove that it is true to me. Or it's saying, I've been chasing this thing, but this has no basis in myself. This is something that was expected of me. I was pressured into, or I saw a commercial for and have been chasing ever since. Like that is the basis of mindfulness. It's challenging those things or proving to yourself that it is true for you. And either way, it's a gift. It might be uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, that's how humans operate.
Yeah.
We gravitate to the things that we're told to want. We gravitate towards the things our parents told us to want. We gravitate towards the things that we've been offered, right? If we've been offered less, let's say in a relationship, and we don't question it, we're quick to say, okay, well, maybe that's what I deserved. I was offered it, therefore it's what I deserved. Where the reality is it's way down here and what you deserve is up here. But if we don't challenge it, well, there we go again. Or like I just did an episode on like how we're very quick to let other people get into our relationship. You're in a relationship with someone else, your love is good and solid, but you're looking out and you see someone post this on Instagram and they say this or that, and you're like, well, maybe that's the example. Maybe that is love, and what I have isn't love. Even though what I have feels good to me, maybe it's not. We let other people get in our head, and of course, the first step is knowing what you want and finding it, but keeping it, having it, we have to be open to being inspired and listen to other people. We almost have to have blinders on, so we stop letting people get in our heads. It's so easy, especially in the day of social media. But yeah, all related.
Yeah, we have to set standards. I think it goes hand in hand. Like you talk a lot about relationships, right? Like we have to have standards for our relationships, but we also have standards for ourselves. And I feel as though like you even being in a space to begin with, you had to have a really good relationship with yourself to talk about other relationships. Where did that, was it outside of the podcast? Was there anything that was really foundational for you in just building up your relationship with yourself, leading? Because I know sales and then stepping out of that, there's definitely a lot associated with, results compared to self-worth, et cetera, like that.
Yeah. I mean, not to beat the subject up, but I'm very big on the idea of doing what you say you're going to do,
Yeah.
doing the difficult things. Like my girlfriend and I joke all the time that, my mission in life is to do the difficult things, do the things you don't want to do the things that make you uncomfortable, do the things that are awkward or embarrassing. You have to do them. You have to do them. And if you don't do them, it likely means you don't want it bad enough. And that's really helped me build pride in myself because I don't want to do this, but I'm going to go do it because I know I need to because I want what's on the other side of it. And that taught me, for one, what I'm capable of in regard to what I want. And then when it comes to relationships, that's like my whole ideology built around the idea of reciprocity. If someone wants you bad enough, they're going to do the difficult things.
Yeah.
Like I don't accept excuses. I really like sometimes mindfulness is about tough love. Like for all the women who have been on dates with guys who say, yeah, I'm just really struggling from my last breakup. It's like understandable empathy to you, my friend. But if you want a relationship with that woman bad enough, you're going to fight through it. You're going to do it. You're just going to do it. I don't like the word man up, but you're going to man up and you're going to do it. You're going to at least try to do it. You're not going to throw something away. So I look at everything through the lens of action and the willingness to do the difficult things. You don't have to win. It doesn't have to be poetry, but it's the effort that matters in the face of the thing that is limiting, in the face of the friction that makes it more difficult. That is the measure of maturity. And it's also the measure of how bad you want something. And I look at the two intertwined, that when you're not willing to do that thing, you're not bad people, but it likely means that you don't want that well enough. So when it comes to relationships, and I talk to a lot of people and they're saying, oh, they made this excuse or that, and it seems believable. We try to offer empathy as much as we can, but at the end of the day, someone who wants something, they're going to fight through the difficult thing, whether that's the difficult thing of feeling a certain way or the difficult thing of managing a really crowded calendar or making time for someone, whatever it may be. That is the measure that I look at everything, particularly myself, and it came from that as a starting point.
Yeah, my definition of success is my standards. Like if I'm doing what I said I was going to do,
Yeah.
I'm succeeding
Yes.
1000%.
Love it.
I think way too often we place these expectations of what we want to do, and they're so broad, they're so high, they're so big, and then we don't reach even close to them, and so our self-image, our self-respect depletes over time.
Yeah.
And it's one of the hardest things to build up in our life is that self-respect to show up, because if we don't show up, then everything else falls apart in our life. And how would we be able to be open to a relationship when we can't show up for ourselves first and foremost?
Oof. Yeah. That's a fact. That's well said.
It's our relationship with ourself that's the most important. One of my favorite books is Psycho-Cybernetics, and it talks about like the self-image of how that plays out in our life. And I'm curious for you, like throughout this period of time, I know you said you never really intended to go into the self-help space or anything in that regard. Like you weren't the person that people came to during that period of time. But what's been the lesson that's taken you the longest to learn throughout this period of time that you have been in it?
Oh man, I don't know. I'd say probably something to the extent of like rushing. I mean, I
Mm.
still feel like I'm rushing. In regard to what we're talking about here, it's like, having a goal for yourself, even though mine is to be proud of myself. I continue to confuse that with like achievements too.
Mhm.
And I feel like I'm always rushing to the next thing and the next proof point that what I'm doing is right or that I'm enough in some sense.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's a point that has taken me a long time to address and get to. And I think everyone, struggles with that. But I think for me, that's particularly poignant. Finding a means to be still to find peace, to find a balance. Like the soundbite that I always give is the absence of what I want doesn't
Doesn't negate.
negate the presence of what I have. And I say that so much because I'm still trying to convince myself of that as well. But I think if you can find that, if you can make that true in your life, you're gonna be well set. And I think I'm still learning on that. But I'm working on it.
Yeah. That was a touch point that I literally had for this podcast because that's
Oh, nice.
something, love the quote, and the perspective that I take on it is like striving versus surrendering. Like surrender
Mm,
to the process, like still do everything that we need to do to get to where we want to go, but don't strive to the point where we don't smell the roses. We don't actually enjoy the
yeah.
process of going it. Like I feel like my definition of what life is, the purpose of life is to enjoy the passage of time. If we're not doing that, then what's the point of achieving all these things? Because we're never going to be enough if that's our measurement of it. Because we're enough as we are, and like that has to be the measurement of success, or the measurement of how we rate ourselves, I guess, is we have to know from the beginning that we already are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have to find a way to enjoy the process, and not just because that's a buzz phrase, right? But because if you think about it, like in life, there are many big moments that certainly, hopefully, you deserve, and you should celebrate them, and they should be monumental moments. Finding your partner, getting promoted, big success, selling your company, whatever it may be, buying a home, these things, right?
Yeah.
But those are few and far between. Like in your life, maybe you've got 20, 30, 40, 50 of those big moments. What is more, 50 big moments or 80 years? So I think when you think about it that way, really most of your life is what I call in between days, the days that are in between these big successes or big monumental moments. If we can't enjoy the in between days, what the heck are we doing here? You're throwing away 99% of your days in the hopes of these moments that will then give you the rush of everything was worth it. We have to find a way to enjoy the in between days. Jerry Seinfeld has a great quote of what he refers to it as garbage time. He was talking about raising his kids and how there's all this pressure for parents to carve out quality time with their kids. And he was saying, yeah, of course it's important, but he's like, we don't need to set aside, time to specifically say I am a good parent. Garbage time, the time in the morning when you're with your kid on the couch eating cereal, the late night conversation with your kid past their bedtime. Garbage time, the time that you would normally throw away but is quality time. Why are we putting pressure on ourselves to have, okay, we're going to Disney World, now we're bonding? No, you're bonding in the garbage time. From a parenting perspective, it's the same idea with your in between days. Their in between days is garbage time, the small little things. If we can't find a way to appreciate that, I think we're fundamentally messing up. And it's a struggle. That's why I'm saying this so passionately, because I struggle with that. And we need to find a way to not. So, take it for what it's worth. Put yourself in a position to put your phone down, do nothing, say this is an in between moment, and I'm going to enjoy it because I've decided it is. Get yourself fired up.
Yeah. Like even like you said earlier, it's like doing the dishes, telling yourself you're going to do it, and actually being present doing the dishes, or being present like every single day when I make breakfast, I'm just present in making
Yeah.
breakfast.
Why
It's like
not?
it
Yeah.
it's the subtle things that have such a big impact on our lives that we often neglect because we're thinking about the next thing that we have to do or the next thing we have to accomplish.
Yeah.
No.
And even if like, yeah, I struggle with that too. It's like, oh, maybe I should listen to music while I do the dishes. Not just freaking do the dishes, just do the dishes. But like, I'm not like a biohack, or I'm not a cold plunge guy by any means. But I know a lot of people like to like find incentive to do these things that are, biochemically or spiritually helpful. There's a lot of science around the benefit of doing nothing. Like, what does your brain do when you're doing nothing? I'm not talking about sleeping. I'm talking about when you're sitting and you're just zoned out. You're just staring, or you're walking. You could be moving or something, but you're doing nothing. You've got no agenda on your mind necessarily. You let your mind take you wherever you want. No phone, no music, whatever. Your brain is healing. Your brain is forming associations with its neurons. Associations meaning you're making sense of your past. You're finding clarity in the present. You're building hope for the future. Your brain is doing these things. My understanding ends there, of course, because I'm not that intelligent, but there's science behind it too. Like, not only in a moment of stillness and nothingness can you just be present and appreciate doing the dishes or making breakfast, but also you're allowing your brain to make sense of the world. If we're not making sense of the world, we're just going to continue to chase. So I think there's a benefit there as well.
Yeah, we always have some stimulation going on, and
Yeah.
it's not okay. It's not okay.
Yeah.
We're
It's, yeah. Yeah.
like through like whether it's a podcast or music or an audiobook, whatever it is, we're always taking in more information. I think it's just everyone in the world has the paradigm that we're not enough, and so we're always trying to fulfill a void in some capacity.
Yes. It is true. Yeah. I mean, I'm 35. I feel like I'm turning into my parents sometimes, but it's like, man, there's those old commercials that like eventually you become your parents. It was like a
Yeah.
Geico commercial or something. But it's so funny that everything they used to say was right. Like, put the phone down. Like, enjoy the world, enjoy life. And I used to be like, there's no time for that. I gotta scroll. And now it's like, there's a whole world out there for you to appreciate if you just look up a little bit.
It's so true that the little things like I said, making breakfast or going on a walk or like giving yourself time to get out of your head is probably the time where you feel most present. Like there's no accomplishment that's going to make you more fulfilled than being where you are and actually seeing it for what it is, knowing that.
Right, because that's the goal of accomplishment. The goal of accomplishment, at least business wise or
Of course.
success wise, is so that you have freedom to do whatever you want, to appreciate what you have.
Mhm.
So it becomes this weird cyclical thing that if we don't challenge it, we'll never escape it. So again, that's why I say sometimes mindfulness isn't sexy, sensitive energy. It's tough guy talk in the mirror and saying, "Case, enjoy this moment because you've decided that you're worthy of it and that this is a moment that you should appreciate." And putting yourself in that headspace where you're, being kind to yourself and forgiving to yourself, but you're also holding yourself accountable to doing what you say you're going to do. And I say, I'm going to appreciate this time.
Absolutely. You have to find a balance. You have to do
Yeah.
what you said you were going to do, but also enjoy doing it. Find a way to enjoy doing it.
Yes.
And it's like I take a lot of perspective on like risk versus regret. Like I lost a lot of family growing up, like at a young age as well. And so it was just something for me that it was like I don't want to get to the end of my life and say that I didn't enjoy the process of doing what I said I wanted to do. Like
Mm.
even me being here now speaking to you, the fact that I'm 19 and I'm like doing a podcast and able to work from wherever I want blows me away, but I'm still thinking about where I want to be in 10 years from now. And so it's like it is a cyclical pattern. It's a the hedonic treadmill that most of us get caught in as high
Yeah.
achievers. We always want to see what's next.
Yeah. Well, you should be proud of yourself for having that mentality at such a young age. Like my regret is not having this mentality until I was 30, 31. So, I mean, it's going to take you places that I think many people, older people regret because I think eventually everyone comes around. Everyone comes around, but when? Too late? Oh, such a bad feeling. So, kudos to you for being disciplined and having that lens of self-pride.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember who said it, but it was like the mindset of smell the roses more kind of perspective on
Yeah.
things. And I think for us, like for a lot of people, they need the perspective of, do what you said you were going to do, take the action. But I think for high achievers, it's almost like on the other side, like lean on the side of like, dude, like we get it, you want to achieve, we get it, but like enjoy it and enjoy that process throughout the journey because that's what life is about. There's no point in being here if you're not going to do the best
Yeah.
to enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, I like Thich Nhat Hanh's writing a lot. He's kind of the father of mindfulness, but he's got something he calls the non-toothache, which
Mm,
is, when you have a toothache, it really sucks. In that moment, you're like, man, I would kill to not have a toothache. Like, I can't believe I used to have great, healthy teeth and I
yeah.
could smile and talk without pain. But then, a couple weeks go by, you get your teeth fixed and you don't have a toothache anymore. In that moment, we're not saying, man, it's great to not have a toothache. It's like only in the moments where we're under duress or pain or anxiousness do we want what's normal, which is level, which is in between. But in the in between, we're not thankful for the contrast of that. So if you want to give yourself a dose of immediate gratitude, think about something that used to really pull you back or hurt you or whatever, and then that you've healed past or evolved through, and then be grateful. Like, it's contrast is a powerful thing. I think a lot of our pride and optimism and gratitude can come from past moments that did pull us back, but then having grown through them, we could find that moment of intentional gratitude for sure.
So true. It's a perspective I like to take is like when you're healthy, you have 1,000 problems, but when you're unhealthy, you have one problem. It's
Oof,
like,
yeah.
dude, when if we took that into perspective
Oof,
more often, the way that we live our life would transform immensely. And I know
that's a
like
great quote. Yeah.
I know a big part of for you, like the way that you see mindfulness is like taking past experiences, rebranding them in a compassionate way. Because I feel for a lot
Mm,
of us, we're coming from a place of shame or neglect
yeah.
or insecurity. What does your rebranding process look like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it comes from honesty and vulnerability, like the ability to look at your past experiences through an unbiased lens, right? You might have
Mm,
previously had a lens of blame or guilt or whatever it may be. What you said earlier, though, is one of my top journal prompts is, what if I'm wrong? What if I've been wrong? What if I have been convinced that I am unlovable because my past 10 relationships failed. And the conclusion that I've been running with is that I'm an unlovable person, unlovable person. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? What would that mean? Again, you have to be able to observe and not just feel in moment of introspection like this, because otherwise you're just going to continue to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, if you're not unlovable, what would that mean? Well, it would mean maybe you do deserve a partner. Maybe you do have a lot to offer. Maybe your standards shouldn't be in the gutter. What would that change? Well, it would probably change what you put up with. It would change your mentality towards dating. It would change all these things. It would change actions, of course. So I think it's your ability to look back at these incidences and question the conclusion you've arrived at, that leaves room for new possibility. And then, of course, you have to prove that that possibility is true by taking a step in that direction to validate it. But I think that question is a great one. What if I'm wrong? What if I've been wrong? What if I was wrong in the past?
Yeah. Yeah. Because we live our life, we predict a future based on past experiences, which keeps us in a cyclical pattern of creating the same exact future because we're basing it off our past.
Yeah. And we're just going to continue to attract the same thing. If we've arrived at a conclusion, we're going to find proof of that. Absolutely.
It comes back to the delusional optimism. Like if
Yep.
we don't have that, we literally create the same future throughout our entire lives.
Yeah.
And that's why like books and like just everything in this space, jumping into this space young was so impactful for me because it, like you said, you took this on this perspective later in your life. Take me through like your internal narrative prior to stepping into this space to begin with, because it seems like you're in just it's like a whole different shift. I know for me it was.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say a lot of, hoping for permission, right? Hoping that someone or something would say, oh, no, this is right. Like looking for the better example, right? To say, here's the clarity you seek. It's not here, it's there. I think that was the previous mentality. Go to college, get a job, make money, buy a home, get married, do these things. Which I have no problem with that practically, but it's how do you arrive at the motivation to achieve those things? Previously for me, it was very, well, they're doing it and they look happy, so I should probably emulate that. A lot of emulation, a lot of what I call living in the gray,
Yeah.
which is kind of just what a lot of us do, which is just floating, hoping for someone else or something else to come along and say, hey, come over here. Like this is the right thing. A lot of looking for validation in those type of achievements. So I'd say, yeah, the real shift is from outer to inner. Of course, being, practical and realizing that a lot of that does come from other people. But knowing that the motivation has to come from within. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I used to be, much more, I don't know, introverted or just, I talk a lot now. Sometimes I need to shut up, but it just shows me that I have a point of view in life, which I think a lot of us think we have points of view that come from ego.
Yeah.
But I think the point of view that I've developed is one of balance, humility combined with conviction, and that's conviction that come from experience and pride and everything that we're talking about here. And that feels balanced, right? We know when we're full of shit. We absolutely do. We know when we're saying things just because it's rhetoric. We know when we're saying things because it's expected of us. Now, for me, it's that balance. Ego, the good ego, the ego that says I can handle whatever happens, and then humility that says I don't know shit, and I need to go out and find answers. So I think that balance there.
Yeah, the questioning is so big because I don't know the exact like word to use for it, but it's like the more that you know, the more that you realize you don't know. Kind
Yes.
of perspective on life.
Yes.
I think it's Murphy's law, maybe, but it's definitely a really big perspective to take on life. There's one question that I ask every guest. At the last question I ask, it really encapsulates what I'm trying to do with the podcast, because I feel life is more about unlearning than it is about learning, truthfully.
Yep.
And the question is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
Ooh, yeah. I'd love to be specific. What belief am I unlearning? I don't know. I mean, I will say that the topic of luck is a trigger one because I used to like I'd say like, man, I never get lucky. I never win things. Like I always used to kind of be that way, or having a mentality of that would happen to me, right? When something bad goes wrong, I'm like no one else, but yeah, that would happen to me. So I think getting away from that, you call that being a victim or something like that, or a defeatist kind of mentality.
Yeah.
I think is something that I used to struggle with and, seeing glimpses of from time to time. But I think through everything we're talking about now, really overcoming that and realizing the role that, randomness and bad luck does happen, but it's far superseded by my ability to go out and create good luck, better luck, optimism driven luck, whatever it may be. I think that's been really, it's helped me grow a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's the ego, right? The ego is always going to try to find proof to reinforce why this isn't working out or this shouldn't happen to me, et cetera, et cetera. It's like
Yeah.
the victim
Yeah.
mentality, it's given to us.
Yeah, that's the ego. I think a lot of times we think about ego as being someone who's just, bragging and is full of
Overly,
themselves. It
right.
goes the other way too.
Oh,
The
yeah.
the ego keeps you in place and makes you think that you're a bad person or a victim or a defeated person. So it goes both ways. It's a powerful force. It either gives you delusional confidence that you don't deserve,
Hmm.
or it gives you, delusional guilt and blame that you also don't don't deserve. So it goes both ways.
And that's why the mindfulness is such a like big component because if you never stepped out of your sales job and then stepped into sharing your feelings, there would have been no transformation within yourself to realize
Yeah.
that that ego even plays out in your life. That's how most people live their life is they're not
Yeah.
even aware of
Yeah.
that voice.
Yeah, if you don't question it and not just question it internally, but question it through action, you're just
Yeah.
going to assume it's true. Why wouldn't you? I mean, we're very logical creatures. I would continue to believe it. But yeah, intention, awareness, action.
That's it, man. More than grateful to have you on the show, brother. Thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate you, man. Great chat. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.